Hello everybody, my name is Joan and I would say welcome here and congratulations on making it here. The fact that you are here means that stuff isn't on fire right now, probably. So just don't check your phones. My name is Joan O'Callaghan. I am on the SRE team in Udemy. I am the site operations lead and I've worked in this area for over 10 years and I've done most of the jobs. And I've always been in a small team as well, so I know that you always have to do a lot of different things. So, why are you here? Generally, if your entire engineering team is you, or it's you and Priya, or anytime you ask your CTO for an SRE, they just laugh hysterically and say, please go away, the site's down and I'm trying to fix it. So you're not officially an SRE because you're supposed to be doing other stuff, but it's really hard to get your work done when everything else is on fire. And sometimes it might seem that you're the only person who can see that fire. So this is you. And this is the other people that you might be working with. So, welcome to SREcon. And you're looking at all of these beautiful presentations, and it's things like, our chatbot has just made a data center on the moon. It also fixes all of our issues, before they happen, using a mixture of time, machine learning, and magic. And they're like, well, what are you doing? You're like, oh God, please don't ask me. So every single company here and every single company in the world has some sort of horrible, janky infrastructure. They just don't do presentations on it because they're embarrassed just like you. And anyone who says otherwise is a massive liar, or else they're now so high level, their only technical knowledge comes from their own staff's SREcon presentations. So this is where we have our, what I would like to call a motivational grammar lesson, which is, I have a dumpster fire, you have a dumpster fire, we all have dumpster fires. They have dumpster fires, it's everywhere. So this is where I would say when you come to SREcon, feel inspired, not inadequate. And this is not the official motto of SREcon, but I kind of think it should be. So how do you get started? So the TLDR is when you're wearing your SRE hat, I will come back to that, you only pick small things to do, like things that you can do in 1 to 2 hours. You book some time for it, like you literally put it into your calendar. And then you keep going, and Jesus, Joan, that's not very helpful. So this is where we go to, like, how do you draw an L? Draw 2 circles, draw the rest of the L, So just to unpack that a little. So you have to commit some time to this. You have to do it every week. You have to be relentless and keep going. You have to, first of all, start with a review of what you have. You need to know all of what's happening in your company. What are the bad parts, the weak parts, the strong parts? What needs your attention most? You record all of the terrifying and gross things that you find, and you make tasks. The tasks must be small. They must be things you can do in 1 to 2 hours. Writing down things like, we shouldn't have a monolith, or just the word microservices. This is of no bloody use at all. It has to be small things. And then you report all the gross things you find to the rest of your team, to your boss. I will come into that in a second. And then you keep going. And then we will do rules and blameless incident reports, and I will come back to that briefly. So you'd say, how is this different to my normal work? This sounds like everything I normally do plus more panic. And the difference in this is adding a proactive element that is not covered by your other job. So you're doing your normal job, something breaks, you have to deal with it. This way, you're doing your normal job, but you might be ahead of some of those other issues. And you're also having the SRE mindset slowly infiltrate your company like some sort of beneficial disease. It would be wonderful. So what we are going to do here is, so this is a really important part to this. This is CYA, which most of you will know is cover your ass. So tell your boss what you're doing. Don't just say, a couple of weeks later, I spent all that Friday doing this thing you didn't tell me to do. They don't really like it when you do that. So it informs them of the workload that is needed for this. It informs them of the risks that are there. There's a magical, mythical chance they might go, do you know what, you do need more resources. I'm going to hire you some SREs. It's not likely, but The main thing is that you do not take on another full-time job. Just because you find all of this crap doesn't mean it's yours. You don't want to burn out. Because if you find all of this and you attempt to do it, why would the company hire more staff if you're doing that and your other job? Why should you risk your health and your sanity and your career just because they won't hire enough staff to do this? So find out what the issues are. Let them be aware of it. You can do part of it, but don't try to do all of it. It's not worth it. So start with doing a review of different areas of your company. So first case is, what is the worst thing that could happen to your company? And so you've got these things like security breach, data loss, downtime. These are bad things anywhere. All of them are bad things. But say your company is a shopping company, and if you go down for 3 days for Black Friday, you're probably screwed. It's like, this could be the worst thing that might happen to your company. You might not recover. Whereas if you are, say, a company that has patients' medical records, if you have a security breach and that data gets out, you've lost trust. If you're down for 3 days, you probably won't, your company won't die, but if you lose data. So it's finding what is the exact kryptonite for your company. So again, this is another review of what's the capacity requirements for your company. So if you don't know the limits of your company, you cannot keep safe, but also you cannot plan growth. So do you have capacity issues? Is it a thing? It might not be. And if it's not a thing, when is it going to get there? How much headroom do you have? So if you think, well, we're not having capacity issues now, you're like, can you do double? Your boss comes in and says, we've got a huge big contract, and you're like, yeah, we can't do it. It's good to have this information. What is the lead time to get more of anything? So do you have to get hardware? Is it just a question of spinning up some new instances? Do you have some, like if you have to get another network drop, how long does that take? So these are all things that you can do in a review. This is all information you can get in a short amount of time. So it's things you can do on an iterative basis. Do you have peak traffic patterns? Do you know what it is? I do sometimes get snotty with people who say, Joan, can I do this at 9 a.m. on a Friday morning? I'm like, no, that's peak. And they're like, I didn't know that. They don't necessarily have to know that, but I have to know that. But it's just good information to have around planning. So security. I will put one caveat on this security thing. This, to continue my tortured fire metaphor, this is not like doing a health and safety fire planning of a building. This is me walking into every room and just putting in a fire extinguisher. It's like very, very basic, but as a first pass and for things that you can do in this short amount of time, it's good. So who has access to what? This might seem obvious, but if somebody, say, for example, set up your cloud permissions a long time ago and they were just copying and pasting, you could have the intern who has the same level of permissions as the head of engineering. This is not always good, especially since the permissions might just be star and it's IAM and it's in the root account. These are not good. So just do an audit, find out what these things are. How many people can destroy you? So say your main business is videos and they're all in one bucket. Who has access to that bucket? It's just who works on the database. Find out the number of people who can destroy you and see, is that number good? It could be too high. Like, do all of finance inadvertently have access to your VPN and data center as well? That has happened in places I have worked. It just sort of was an oversight by IT. They all gave them the same access. So, but also the number of people who can destroy you, that might be too low. If it's just one person is the owner on your GitHub repo, that's not right either. You have to be able to counter the lottery factor, or when the person gets hit by a bus. You need to sort this out. So, do people get offboarded? Not very sexy, but nobody ever wants to do this job because it's tedious. You don't have to do it, but you should find out if anyone is doing it, because they probably think you're doing it. And even so the person who's supposed to be doing it, that they have a calendar reminder that says, hey, do this once a week. Do you have a password manager? If you've got public buckets, should they be public? Check them out. Are they okay? Cloud accounts, turn on some audit logs. These are all things you can do in a short amount of time. And again, they should have a payoff for you later. Doing them now is better than doing them never. That's it. Infrastructure. So hands up here who has a completely accurate and up-to-date infrastructure diagram. Oh, there's no liars here. I love you guys. Oh, no, they're the liars. I'm sorry. So it's possibly automated, so it might be accurate. So I would rather have my legs gnawed off by rats than use network diagram software. So I just whiteboard it, and this is a sample one. I swear this isn't Udemy's. So if you do a whiteboard diagram, you can do a very quick picture of what do you have, and then you go, do we have one of anything? And it's a question of like, if you have one of anything, can you have another one? If there are reasons where somebody goes, no, we can't have two of those, it will cost too much. Well, then you could do your risk cost analysis of, well, actually, it doesn't cost that much and it doubles our redundancy if it's something like a load balancer. It could be something else that they're like, well, we can't have another one of those, it costs too much. And you go, okay, we can't have two of them at the same time. Do we know how to reproduce it? So then over a couple of weeks, even if you just reverse engineer how to make that host, write down the instructions. In an ideal world, this is all going to be auto-scaled and automatic and built with Ansible. But until you get there, you have to know how to do it manually. Then you can put it into configuration management. And it's all part of the iterative steps to getting it to be pretty and beautiful. But for now, it's just making it better than it was before. Backups. If you have something that you don't currently take a backup of, take the backups. Because again, if this is something you need to be able to reproduce, you need to be able to repopulate it. And as you all know in theory, and some of you know through horrifying trauma, the backups they're not worth a damn unless you've tested them. So back to this diagram, there's one box here called mystery host. Is it important? Is it not? Does the entire business land on this? Just some guy who worked here in 2015 built it and now nobody knows. So use one of your sessions to see who built it, what's it doing, what happens when you take it out. So solve some mysteries. You might be able to get rid of it. It would be wonderful. So, and practice rebuilding these elements. And it would be great if you could do a quarterly. Quarterly is a good cadence if your company is growing in any way. Quarterly catches, oh man, we got rid of a database, or we added a new one, or we migrated that from Redis to SQL, or the other way around. You catch things like that when they happen quarterly. So quarterly is great. Once a year is also good, because both of those times are better than never, which is what it is a lot of the time. So third parties. So again, this is you reviewing the third parties that your company uses. So some of them, so I suppose the pros and cons of third parties is, if you're a small company or you're just a very busy company, you're paying somebody else to do the work for you. They, in theory, have their own SRE teams. They will fix it. If they're terrible, you can just move to a different third-party company. The cons are you might not have as much control. So if you have a third party that your company relies on hugely, that you are completely going, your site's going to go down without them, you can look into having a redundant or backup service. It might not be cost efficient, but if you've done that little exercise, somebody says to you, hey, our CDN went down, why don't we have two? And you can say, we did look into that. It would cost 100,000 euros a year, and they've only gone down once in the last 3 years. And you said no, and I have the email to prove it. And then they'll be like, it's cool, Joan, it's fine, So for your third parties, have the contact details both ways. So this comes down to, it's 3 a.m. on a Sunday, one of some random third-party service you didn't know you were using has gone down. It's hooked into a lot more things than you had thought. You're trying to figure out who to call. What's the support number? What's your account number? Remember, you didn't even know you were using this third-party service. So, and then you finally get through and they're like, we will only talk to Joe. Joe is the intern who has not been here in 4 years. So you spend a boring hour looking up who your third-party things are, reaching out to them, getting their contact details, the account number, and making sure that they have yours so that they are willing to talk to your team. That when they send updates and outage notifications and maintenance notifications, it goes to a team email, not, Sandra in accounts, because she's the only one who normally talks to them. Put the details on the wiki. Again, not very sexy, but it will save you so much trauma in the future. And in terms of tracking down all the third parties, go to your nice people in finance. They will have invoices, and fun fact, you will usually find a service that you're not using anymore and you're still paying for. So, domains and SSL certs. Do you know all the domains that you have, including the curious misspellings of your name that somebody thought were really necessary to register? Your company might have that glorious tradition of everybody picks a domain registrar that they like and they just go with it. In an ideal world, you would move them all under the one domain. That is not a 1 to 2 hour job. That is a pain in the ass. So if you have all of the logins, that's good enough for now. It's better than it was. Again, contact details should go both ways. This is even more important for domain registrars. Expiry notifications. You should have some. You should know when things are going to expire. It should be hooked up into your monitoring system. But if you cannot get that far in your limited amount of time, because you are doing this along with all of your other crap, put it into an email reminder, put it into the calendar. Top tip though, have it go 3 weeks before it's going to expire, not in the exact minute that it expires, because this is what my friend did, and they had 5 minutes to get new certificates and upload them before their user sessions crashed out. So document your update procedures, because depending on the renewal cadence of your SSL certs and your domains, it might only happen every 3 years. So if you look around here and at your teammates, who was in your company 3 years ago? Who do you think will be there in 3 years? It's like, they're very different groups of people. So you could have it that not a single person in the company has ever had to update this service. So, and even like just one SSL search, that could be on your load balancers, in your configuration management, it has to go to your CDN. There might be some secret part that hooks into your SSO. There's a lot of things that they're small, fiddly changes. None of them are very complex in their own right, but you have to know how to do all of them for things like this, so it's got to go in the wiki. Releases and updates. So this is just updating your code, anything that updates your product. So how many people can update your product currently? Do you know? Should that number be bigger? Should it be smaller? Individual releases or aggregates. Do you have criteria for how you package them? Like, what are the current rules? What is the visibility during updates? Can everybody in your engineering team tell if you're at home and you decide to do an update? Or is everybody working in a vacuum from each other? Are they blind? And you're like, it's okay, we normally just sit across from each other. It's not a big deal. When you start to expand, you've got offices in different places, it's good to know. Even if your first dirty hack attempt at this is you add a bash wrapper, if you add a bash wrapper that just sends a Slack hook that says, Joan updated a thing at 2 o'clock, it's better than what was there before, which was nothing. If you add an event that hooks into your monitoring, again, you can start to see patterns. Again, these all sound kind of basic, but these are things you can do in your 1 to 2 hours, and they are proactive work that will make your life a little easier along the way. Can you revert your updates? And more importantly, can you revert updates? And do the people who update the site know how to revert the updates? Because everybody knows how to update, but do they know how to revert? Again, this seems really obvious, except I have found out that we had a really cool, really fast revert process. We told all the new hires about it. The guy who'd been working there for 5 years didn't know about it. So you've got to just make sure people know. Can you block updates? So have you the means of stopping anybody from doing any updates? Yes, this stops productivity, but what if there's a holiday period or a database upgrade or, like there's this critical sales demo and nobody is supposed to do anything because this is the meeting with the investors and everything like that, and you don't want to have to make this cake. So it would be bad. Keep the salespeople happy. They bring in the money. So, and then what do you do now? So you just keep this cadence. You find things, fix things, little tasks. You share that information. Well, you record what you're doing. You share what you're doing with your peers. They might jump on the bandwagon as well. But also, you will get some allies. You'll have somebody there who's like, well, I'm really into security. Have we thought about doing this? And you're like, no, does that matter? And you can find out what it is. And the more allies you have, the more you can increase the priority of your work and hopefully get some resources for it. So there are other things we can add in here as well. Just check my time. So you have rules within your company. You might not know what they are, but you have them. And some of them are unwritten rules. Some of them are so obvious. Why on earth would you ever need to tell anybody? So you need to, but people don't know it. So if everybody knows the rules, everybody's working from the same script, and this is going to improve your reliability. So when you find what your rules are, you publish them. You share them with your peers. Some of your peers will immediately go back and go, that's crap, or those are lies. Or you will find out that the reason for Rule 4 no longer even exists. But again, then you're going to have clarity of what everybody is supposed to be doing. You update your rules when people give you feedback. And again, these rules are not just for new hires. That's a great way to find out what your rules are when the new hire does something interesting. And then you go, no, we don't do that. But if you keep publishing them, then everybody does know. So these are just rule examples. Again, some of these might sound so obvious, or some of them you might go, well, we would never do that at our company. That's terrible. But as long as the people, it doesn't matter what your rules are. It doesn't matter at all. As long as the people within your company know what they are. And you're not just punishing them because you're like, well, surely everybody knows that. It's completely obvious. And They might have been wearing their tinfoil hat the day you thought of this rule in your head and didn't tell anybody. Maybe you have a really boring voice and they weren't listening. So just tell them. Don't tell them, write them down, share it properly. Then we have blameless incident reports. So I could just, you probably already have incident reports, and I know there's been a million things about blameless, so I'm not going to go into too much depth, but there is literally no downside to introducing blameless incident reports to your company. There's no downside because, so first of all, it's another step towards SRE because you're building that accountability and improvement cycle. You've got a record of progress. So say you have 50 incidents, they're all horrifying, but you can look back and see, oh, this was a bad year, but you can go, oh, we fixed that one, we fixed that one. And I've never met any exec of any type, not even engineering, any of them. I've never met any of them that don't love the idea of incident reports. Just sucker them in, get them on board with the idea, get them to read the incident reports and attend the meeting. They will gently encourage other teams to do them as well. And then this puts them on the hook to make some of the improvements go through. So say you have an incident report and it's a repeat issue, it's happened about 3 times. The exec is going to go, why is that thing happening? And you can be like, well, we did tell you how to fix this, but it, causes too much delay to the current production cycle and we don't have the manpower. You might get more resources, or at least you're going to get some empathy. They're going to understand why it's happening instead of them just shouting at you. They wouldn't shout anyway, but So make sure that the documents are read-write, not write-only. Someone must lay eyes on them other than the author, otherwise it's just your autobiography, your sad, sad autobiography. Have some templates. You just find some useful templates, reach out to some interesting companies and say, what's your template for your incident report? Mind if I take a look? Would you mind sharing? And get an executive sponsor. And the no blame, you have to coach the executive sponsor on what no blame is. They will say, of course we know what that means. No, they don't. So they probably don't, but it's good to be sure. So in terms of blameless, company size doesn't matter. You have to have a culture of blameless incident reviews. This is completely independent of your company size. It's, because people, if they are afraid to tell you, if they have a very real fear that they're going to get fired, they're not going to tell you when they've broken something. They're not going to tell you how they broke it or what happened. And then you can't make it better. You can't fix it. Fear causes mystery. So I'd also say there's no such thing as human error. And I know the first time I said that, I said it in a sarcastic tone in my voice, in my head. But if somebody does make an error, it's because they either shouldn't have been there, which means the access levels should have been corrected. They didn't know what they were doing. They haven't been trained. Or they knew what they were doing, but they buggered it up, which means this seems like something that there should have been a script for it. It should have been automated. So when you look at it that way, there is no such thing as human error in this context, but we just haven't prepared people well enough. We're not giving them the tools to succeed. So if you keep that message going within your company, you will start to see improvements. The goal of every incident review is to make things better for the next time, not to throw anybody under the bus. It's just to figure out what happened. So also, you've just paid for a lesson, learn it. Otherwise, what was the point? Make it better. Finally, this is where I would say it is okay to not be okay. So don't stress. Things are going to break. This is not your main job. You're doing this whole other job as well. You cannot keep on top of everything. Don't take it personally because things are failing. You are doing the best you can. And unless you get the green light to get rid of some of your other tasks, you can't do it all. It's not possible and you will burn out. And then you're like, but things still keep breaking. It can feel very overwhelming when you have that happening. But the main causes of problems, all these things that keep breaking, is you're doing code changes, and that's because you're updating your product. This is a good thing. Infrastructure change, you're actually making things better, and you're improving things, you're scaling up. This is wonderful. You could have network and third-party issues. This is bad luck, but it's not going to happen too often, and you can blame them, and then they have to fix it. So again, not the worst. Technical debt, it happens to us all, but you just have to try not to let it happen repeat times. Just try not to let it happen twice. And capacity issues, and for that one you have to say, congratulations, people actually want to use your product. You have some chance of, your company's going to be okay. I worked someplace where everything was rock solid. All of our incidents were perfectly controlled. There was no murder mysteries. There was no weird things happening because our product was terrible and it wasn't growing at all. And we had no customers. So, you know, it doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be better. That's kind of what you have to just keep going. You can have the notion of the beautiful dream. And I think there's the quote of, is it perfect is the enemy of good? It's like, don't go, oh, if only we had auto-scaling. We don't have auto-scaling, so I might as well not even try. You just try, you reverse engineer back to what you would have to do. What's the very first step? If there's like 30 steps to get there, go back to step 1 and just keep chipping away at it. You'll get there one day, but if every day you make it a little bit better, you know, your life is going to be easier, and you will keep a record of your progress, and you will see how much better you have made things. And that is it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joan, for demystifying the process of starting up SRE in a small organization. We can take questions now for a couple of minutes. Is there a question? Anyone? No questions at all? Oh, a question over here. We can race. Please hold, walking to a questioner.
Hi. Would you have any specific advice for a former ops team moving into SRE?
I suppose it's question the timeline and the priority of everything that you're doing. Just be really clear on timelines. And when people are like, because people will constantly come to you and say, oh, this is broken, and you've carefully done out your own plans, and then other teams will come to you and say, this is more important. So sprint planning is a nightmare. And people will come to you and say, this is more important, and it will be more important, but just record what you're doing, because otherwise people will say, as an ops team, you had all of these goals, and you got them. As an SRE team, you had all these goals. You're not hitting them at all. You have to record everything you did and say, we did all of those other things as well, and they were reprioritized. So track what you were doing, because it will feel like you're being constantly randomized. That is sort of part of being an SRE, but just make that work count because you did it, and people aren't going to let you away with it. So yeah, that would be it.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Joan.
Thank you.
Round of applause.